Salutations everyone, this is Razor bringing you guys another Overwatch video where today we're going to talk about the overall balance of the game thus far. We've had a little time to settle in to the current patch and we got to see Overwatch League Stage 4 start off. They don't have the new Hanzo, so we didn't get to see, what they were bringing to the table to see how they are going to handle this guy, but we got to see Brigitte. Not the current Brigitte, she's one nerf shy of being the Brigitte that we see now, but we've been able to kind of see where, they're bringing the meta and, our competitive games have, everyone's done the placement matches and we're starting to see into the swing of things. There's things are starting to form about what comps are popular or what characters are getting picked more often and what characters are losing popularity. And starting off with the Overwatch League, a lot of people were ready for the Brigitte meta. Everyone was talking about it's going to be a Brigitte meta, triple support, right? Well, spoiler alert, there's no Brigitte meta. There's, triple support was used, Brigitte was used, but definitely wasn't overwhelming. She wasn't used a whole lot. Actually, there wasn't a single map in this first week of Overwatch League where Brigitte was used more often than she wasn't. Her highest pick rate was in Blizzard World, and that was at 44%. So she wasn't used nearly as often as Zenyatta or Mercy or I think Pharah even had a higher percentage overall. We got to see a ton of Pharah, more Reinhardt, a lot of Zarya. So we got to see the meta kind of shift away, not certainly away from Dive, because we did see Dive and Dive was quite successful. But of course, a lot of growing pains. The Overwatch League teams, even though they're all professionals and have a paid coaching staff, they still fall to the same mistakes that everyone else in matchmaking does, and that's, they hear hype about one comp, so they play it thinking that that's the way that the game should be played, and they kind of only are attuned for fighting a certain play style, or they assume too much, and when they see one team successful, they think the only way to beat it is to mirror it exactly. We've kind of seen this from the beginning of Overwatch League, and always when the meta shifts, we see this a bit. We saw this, with Moira. Everyone thought, triple comp, the triple tank was going to be a thing. We saw, a tiny bit of it, but, it was nice for it to have a place, but not for it to be the meta. I don't think we have the meta at this point. Dive is not the end-all be-all. Triple tank or quad tank is not the end-all be-all. Triple support is certainly not the end-all be-all. And neither is triple DPS. But they kind of all have a place in the meta right now for, for competitive, for matchmaking, as well as for Overwatch League. And I think that's pretty cool. With Hanzo not in Overwatch League right now, let's say he is too strong, which many people are saying he's too strong, and he is getting a nerf because, the outcry. Whether it was needed or not, I'm not going to say that I know the exact answer of what needs to be changed with the game. I can only show you my experiences and give you my thoughts, as well as observing what happens at the pro level. But clearly he was deemed, through the outcry, I think, that he was too strong, so he's getting a nerf. We didn't get to see him in the Overwatch League, but with him out of the equation, to where we still have to, Blizzard still feels like they need to fine-tune the character before they bring him into the pro scene. So unfortunately, we'll go through the entire season without seeing the new useful Hanzo. We actually have seen more Hanzo this week than we have, I think, the entirety of the season, even though he doesn't have, the ability that so many people are crying foul over. Of course, they were crying foul over Scatter Arrow as well. But with Hanzo not in the mix, we've got so many different ways that people have been playing. We've seen Brigitte have an impact, right? And I think that's something we all want. So many people, when their new hero comes out, they don't want them to be good, which is really weird. Whenever a character comes out that is deemed good, it's new, it's a new thing, so they kind of get all the hype and get overhyped in a sense, and sometimes consequently they get over nerfed, as was with Doomfist's case. But I think we want more characters to be viable in the game. Brigitte has allowed Reinhardt and Zarya to come back into the fold, and even with this new meta, most of the time when we saw Reinhardt Zarya, it wasn't ran with the Brigitte, so it's not like Brigitte enables them, and a lot of people didn't see Pharah coming to such a high standard of living where she is right now. People are worried about Graviton Dragon Strikes being a thing, but Graviton and Pharah ult is way more powerful, doesn't even come close. So, people didn't see that coming. A lot of people thought Junkrat was gone because of Zarya coming into the fold, and people seeing, Brigitte and the way that the tank battle is going. People thought Junkrat's out of here, but Junkrat's actually an amazing spot. He has been kind of this entire season. It took a lot of teams a while to, realize the potential of Junkrat since he got the double concussion mine. And after the nerf to the damage of the mine, he was exactly as viable. That didn't hurt his viability whatsoever. And, in this current stage right now, Junkrat is kicking ass. And people that were worried about Brigitte, the Brigitte meta or triple support being a problem, they need to watch this week of Overwatch League, because it was not a problem at all. She wasn't used most of the time on any map, so clearly she wasn't, present as much as almost any other any character out there. But she was still useful, and I think that's what we want to say. We don't want any character to be a must pick in all situations, but we also don't want them to be useless. And Brigitte fits that. She's good in the brawl. She's good on certain points. But we didn't see a fact where it's like you need a Brigitte to win. Actually, there was only one circumstance that I saw. It was Shanghai on the losing end, where a team had a Brigitte and the enemy team didn't, and the team with the Brigitte won. I believe that only happened one time. Yes, she is strong, and you see me interrupt 3 ultimates within like 20 seconds here. And she's really good in the brawl. She's got a nice ultimate, which is of course getting nerfed again, even though it didn't seem insanely strong in the Overwatch League, which you would think if something's really imbalanced, then it's going to show its true colors with the best in the world that can do it, like we saw with the Mercy meta, where the Mercies were just ruling the world. But Brigitte doesn't have nearly as much power as Mercy. She'll never be as good as Mercy, never be as versatile as Mercy, and never be as must pick as Mercy could be. In fact, when we did see triple support being run, Mercy was the focal point. Mercy was what was getting the job done. Brigitte was able to go into the front line and do some healing to the tanks, and that enabled the Mercy to not have to heal as much, and she was damage boosting Pharah's and damage boosting Junkrat's, damage boosting Widows, who is still in a good spot right now, at least in Owl, which, some people had, kind of weary ideas about whether, this extra shield was going to be helpful or hurtful. And we saw some creativity that people didn't see, where Brigitte was a bodyguard for a Widow, so that there was always a shield in front of that Widow, so that Widow could just win the Widow fight almost for free, or at the very least scare the other Widow away, because she has a portable shield and Brigitte in front of her. So we got to see a lot of creativity and a lot of different spaces where Brigitte can be used, but by no means was she a must pick. By no means did she dictate to the meta, and by no means did she even dictate a single map. Whenever we did see Brigitte outplaying a team is when they were just playing against her incorrectly. Like I said in my last video, it was the Bastion problem. They didn't know, in the beta, a lot of people didn't know how to fight Bastion. And we saw that a little bit where people just didn't know how to fight Brigitte. You don't beat Brigitte by playing against her when she's the strongest. You don't want to out brawl Brigitte. Just like you don't want to out-snipe Widowmaker. Widowmaker will out-snipe McCree. If you are trying to take the long-range battle as McCree against Widow, you're going to lose that fight. If you're trying to snipe Widow with Tracer, she's not going to win. The way that you win that fight is get close enough to Widow and give yourself the advantage. So if you're going up against Brigitte close quarters and not spamming her down while she's useless, because like I said in my Brigitte is OP and useless video, she has strengths where she's strong and really prevalent weaknesses where she isn't, because she needs to be close to do some healing, to do any sort of useful job on the team, and that's where she can dominate. If you're not within shield bash range, you can't get shield bashed. And a lot of teams caught on to this quite early. It's kind of like at the beginning of stage 3 with Sombra. So many of the pro teams thought this was going to be a Sombra meta. And we were kind of, weary, it might or might not have been, but it took a couple of weeks for teams to realize, okay, we can't run Sombra. And it took some other teams to be like, we can run Sombra, but just in these few instances. Just as a surprise attack, or only if we need a quick cap, or only on the first push maybe, and then we're going to have to switch, or only if they don't have this certain character to counteract against the Sombra. So we saw that in the beginning of stage 3, and I think we're having the same thing with Brigitte in stage 4, where a lot of teams were, granted, it's not entirely their fault. They didn't know which patch we were going to play on. They were going to play on until like the day or the day before the day before. So, they were practicing the new Hanzo, they were practicing Brigitte and working those two in tandem. So you can't give them a ton of flack for not getting it right on week 1, because they didn't have a lot of time to prepare for the situation, because they didn't know what the situation was going to be at the time. But we did see some teams really pull out ahead in this new patch. I wouldn't want to say it's a new meta. It's kind of a new meta in the fact that there isn't a meta right now, where we saw triple tank, triple support be a thing where no DPS was run. We saw single tank being run where Brigitte was kind of being used as an off tank. We saw triple DPS being run. We saw solo support with the Mercy. We saw so many things, and a lot of them were working, but only some of the time. And that's kind of what Blizzard wants. They want every character to be useful some of, but not all of the time, and for it to be map dependent. No one's going to be, using Pharah in every single map, but if you're on Oasis University, she's pretty damn good, but you're not going to be using her on, say, Gibraltar Defense Point A or Point B, but that's, where you can use Soldier a lot more. So I think that's really good, and it's really interesting to see Rialto. And how that kind of, the maps kind of dictate their own meta. So many people were expecting Reinhardt and Zarya to be so big because of Brigitte for this stage, but actually the maps have more to do with that than anything. Most of the time you saw Ryan Zarya, it was without a Brigitte, but sometimes with. And the teams that were able to play to that comp's strengths were winning, and the teams that were able to exploit that comp's weakness, which is attacking at range, were annihilating them. Pharahs were wrecking havoc this week more so than ever before, and nobody predicted that because they just blindly think whatever it is one or another group of people think, because they have a YouTube channel, or because a character's new, therefore they have to be OP, or something like that. They see a GIF online where, oh, this character is useless now. We saw a much lower pick rate with Tracer, but we still did see some Tracer. I think we'll see more next week now that people are kind of catching on to how weak Brigitte comps can be. Because most of the time, most teams weren't playing with Brigitte. And that's because she's not very good most of the time. But when she is good, she was being played fairly well, and sometimes was very, very key in a lot of those engagements. And that's kind of what we want. It's good for Brigitte to have a place in this meta. Where Hanzo fits is going to take a while to see. Overall, he is very prominent in matchmaking. I haven't seen a Hanzo clearly dominate, at least on the enemy team. A few times where I've been able to be Hanzo, which doesn't happen very often because I don't get to play DPS because I'm a filler. And everyone else always seems to pick Genji and Torbjorn and Symmetra for some reason. But when I've fared fairly well. but also sometimes it's just enabling your team by creating space with that long range damage. I could go 9-0 with Hanzo and get 0 medals, but you know, I wasn't dying. I was getting a couple of key picks and creating space because of targets that I could threaten. So I don't think Hanzo is going to be the end-all be-all, especially when the nerf does come in to the storm arrows, which I think might be warranted. It's very possible. People are also talking about possibly asking for a damage drop-off with those bows, because the reason it's getting nerfed is because if you're boosting it with Mercy, it seems to be too strong because you can one-shot headshot a squishy if you're being boosted by Mercy. Kind of what we saw in pre-beta days with the Widowmaker, 3 Widowmakers, 3 Mercies problem, where they nerfed Widowmaker and they nerfed Mercy's damage boost because that was so suffocating. And they don't want to see that happen, which is definitely, I think, a part of the equation into why they did not allow the new Hanzo, while the Overwatch League is playing on a patch that only existed for 2 days for the rest of us, where Brigitte just came out, but new Hanzo wasn't there yet. So very, very interesting to see what this final stage of the Overwatch League looks like. And matchmaking, it's good to see more Reinhardts, more Zaryas. Most people are playing Zarya very incorrectly, so the good Zaryas are winning. Most people are playing with Brigitte very incorrectly, so the good Brigittas are winning. But that's kind of always been the case. The better Mercy tends to win, the better Diva tends to win. And DPS has always been in a pretty good spot, and Junkrat and Pharah are like super easy to play right now, especially with everybody going for the Reinhardt, Zarya, Brigitte lineup, or, you know, something close to that, where, you know, Hitscan is not in a great place right now. I understand that. And with Hanzo being as good as he is, there's no reason to play McCree almost ever. He's much better, I think, against flankers because of the flashbang. But as far as the ultimate goes, as far as the long range damage and shield battle goes, Hanzo puts McCree out of the water. So yes, there does need to be some balancing still. It is not perfect, but it's good that Brigitte has a place, that she's not a must pick. She's not even as useful as, say, Moira is in triple tank, but if used correctly, she can be good. And if you fight against her correctly, she can be absolutely useless. And the pros have figured that out, at least some of the teams. And hopefully people will start to follow suit, because everyone was ready for their pitchforks. And they didn't get a reason to, because things are pretty darn balanced right now in Overwatch League and in competitive as well. But you'll always have those crybabies.